Taking a Walk.
There is always somebody in that room that needs to hear what you're singing and what you're saying. And if there was just one person in every one of these spaces and I had to perform, it would be the same performance because I would know that they were there for a reason.
Welcome to the Taking a Walk podcast, where your host Buzz Knight speaks with musicians about their inspirations and their journey in music. Today, Buzz is joined by actress, singer, and producer Rita Wilson. Rita's work in film is well known, and today we'll get to learn more about her journey as a recording artist. Rita released her first album, AM/FM, in the spring of 2012, an album of classics from the 60s and 70s, and she began writing her own music in 2016, and she's been going non-stop since. She has 5 studio albums to date, and Rolling Stone hailed her music as inspiring. You may have heard her or seen her on The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel Live, or The Today Show. Rita's new single is Look How Far I've Come, and she'll discuss that and more about her new music and recent projects. Rita Wilson joins our host Buzz Knight on Taking a Walk.
Rita Wilson, it's an honor to meet you and to have you on the Taking a Walk podcast.
We're taking a walk. We're walking afternoon time, I think it is.
Yeah, we got to walk the lunch off, right? Or the breakfast off, or all of it, yeah. Well, thank you so much. Do you remember the first time in your life that you were touched by music?
Well, yes, it would have to be the Beatles, and it would have to be anything off their first album that was released in the U.S., because it just engaged you. You felt that they were speaking to you. Now, granted, I was like 8 years old or less probably less when they came to the States, or that album came to the States. But nevertheless, I Want to Hold Your Hand. I mean, every 8-year-old is already fully aware of romance and what may await them in their older lives. And so that just, the exuberance with which they sang was pretty great.
Would it be fair to say that's the first album purchase was a Beatles album, or 45?
It was the first album given, because we grew up in Hollywood and there was a woman in the neighborhood. She worked at Capitol Records, and she would bring us on the day of release an album. And so me, my brother and sister would, sort of fight over it. But that's how we got the Beatles music. It was incredible. I mean, she was so sweet and so generous to think of us.
You will appreciate this. So I grew up in Stamford, Connecticut, not far from New York City. And we thought we were so cool because we found this place. It was called the Record Rack. And it was this little dive record store in the center of town. And we would go the day before when we knew a Beatles release was coming out. And the guy would charge us $1 more because we would get it a day before. And we thought we were so cool.
You were. He was ahead of his game with surge pricing, and you were like, it's worth it to pay that extra $1 for the album. Because you would be the coolest if you got it early. Come on.
Yeah. And I don't know if you could see, if you squint behind me, but the wall behind there.
That's from Help, is it?
Yes.
Yes, and I can't see what the one on the left is.
I'll get my big head out of the way. There's a Ringo album cover.
Great.
And then at the far side there is George Harrison's Cloud 9.
Oh my gosh, that's so great. By the way, just a sidebar, I just saw that the 50th anniversary reissue of All Things Must Pass is charting.
I love it.
Like multiple charts. How great is that?
Oh, and what an amazing piece of work that, just like everything around the Beatles holds up to this day.
It does. It does. I mean, what they were doing was so original and so fresh. And I know from, being lucky enough to have had a couple of conversations with Paul McCartney and George Harrison, that when they were making music, they just wanted to keep making music and trying new things. And, they didn't repeat themselves. That's why we have such an amazing variety of music from them. And they were just constantly inspiring themselves and doing new material. They didn't stick to the same stuff that went like, oh, I know this works and I know this is selling. And they just were like, great, we can keep finding new things to do. I thought that was pretty incredible.
Now, first concert performance by an established act that you ever attended?
Led Zeppelin at the Los Angeles Forum, and it was everything you would hope it would be. Everybody was in love with Robert. All the girls were in love with Robert Plant for sure, and I went with my two girlfriends that were identical twins. They were about 6 feet tall, gorgeous girls with red hair, and we went together. My mom made me my outfit, which was a little Hawaiian print crop top and bell bottoms, with a drawstring waist. I wore these big wedge sandals called corkies. We were so excited. We were running to the Forum because we didn't want to miss anything. And I fell flat on my face in the parking lot because those corkies are not to be used for running. It did not dampen my love of the concert, however.
Now, I have to say, I think you'll agree with this, when we talk about rock stars aging gracefully, don't you think Robert Plant and Jimmy Page have aged so gracefully?
They really have. And I mean, let's talk about Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr and Mick Jagger, who's, you see him on stage and you're like, okay, that's 81. I'm in. Sign me up. I'll do that. And then the women, Annie Lennox, Joni Mitchell, who's made an extraordinary comeback, Carole King, Stevie Nicks. All of these people have really just not only, I don't want to call it surviving but they've lasted because the music was so good and so powerful.
Without a doubt. We're going to come back to a few of those, particularly Joanie. But congratulations on the single, Look How Far We've Come. Can you tell me about that project and how that collaboration came together?
Yes. Look How Far We Come. I wrote that with Billy Steinberg and Josh Alexander, his new writing partner after Tom Kelly retired. And for people listening who may not know who he is, you might want to Google him. But he's responsible for songs like True Colors, Eternal Flame, I Touch Myself, I Drove All Night, I'll Stand By You. I could go on and on. Alone by That Heart Did. And I was a huge fan, obviously, of Billy's. And we had some mutual friends, and I met him. And over the years, we would see each other and have this sort of lovely interaction. But I started doing a show called Liner Notes, which is songwriters telling the stories behind their hits and singing them. And what is beautiful about that is when the songs are written, often on keys or guitar, you don't hear that song played in that way and sung by the songwriter because producers get a hold of it and they make the song what they want to make. Billy also wrote Like a Virgin. So when, I started doing these shows, I had the guts and temerity to ask Billy if he wanted to, come to one and participate. And he said yes, and he enjoyed it. So he came back many times, and I'm so grateful for that. It established our friendship more deeply, and which I'm so grateful for. But he also one day said, if you ever want to write together, let's write. And I was like, what? I just, I would never think to ask somebody like Billy if he would want to write with me. So I was immediately said yes. And
I thought you were going to go, I'm sorry to interrupt. I thought you were going to go, well, Billy, let me think about this and I'll come right back to you. No, I'm kidding.
I know, right? And so So we wrote together, and Billy he started out as a poet and is a poet to this day. And so as a lyricist, he came to the session already with stuff for that song. And the title, of course, Look How Far We've Come, I think, is really about a relationship and, the ups and downs of a relationship. But I also respond to it in a way that was more about, look how far we've come if you're even having a conversation with yourself. And so for me, it resonated as, wow, look how far I've come as a songwriter. I'm sitting in a room with Billy Steinberg, and somebody who would, spend time doing that with me felt very humbling, and also a moment to reflect and be extremely grateful for where I was at that moment in time.
Oh, that's so special. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So then now you're also up for a Grammy. Congratulations for Best Roots Gospel Album.
Yeah.
That is so exciting. I want to hear about that, but I want to ask you first, how difficult is it to be bending genres here?
Well, first, let me say that the Roots Gospel album called Through the Storm. I'm sorry, the song is called Through the Storm. The album is called The Gospel According to Mark. And the artist who put that together and produced it is Mark D. Conklin. And he's an extraordinary songwriter and a very soulful singer. And we had met because we had done an interview because he was doing something called the Grammy Experience. And he interviewed me for an album. And I just thought he was wonderful. And we had a great conversation, kind of like we're having now. And when this project came up, he asked if I would want to sing with him on a track called Through the Storm. I said, of course I would. I mean, that would be beautiful. And I loved the song when he sent it to me. So it's not my album, but it is when you are on an album that is nominated and it wins a Grammy, you also win a Grammy because you're part of that project, which is pretty great.
That is so awesome. Fingers crossed, fingers crossed for that.
Fingers
right?
crossed.
Yeah. So you were part of the amazing Joanie Jam that happened at the Hollywood Bowl, led by Brandi Carlile, of course, and Joanie, and a array of people. How did all that come together with your involvement? And can you give us a glimpse behind the scenes, what that special event was like? Every time I watch clips of it, I have to tell you, it's so beautiful. I'm in tears.
Exactly. How I came to be involved is Brandi Carlile and her wife, Catherine Shepard, are, fully aware of my obsession with Joanie. And they said, we're going to be doing a Joanie Jam at the Hollywood Bowl. And they invited me to participate, which was mind-blowing. Now, the Joanie Jam started because when Joanie had her aneurysm, it took a long time for her to come out of that and get healthy again. And Brandi and Catherine were really responsible for helping her do that because they would go to her house and they would do these Joanie Jams and they would sing music to Joanie, sing her own songs, invite other people to come and sing. And eventually Joanie started singing along, and it was something that reconnected her to, I think, her own music, her own recovery, her own health. And Brandi had the great idea to do the Joanie Jam. And she, of course, did it at Newport Folk Festival first. And that was huge, made an album from that. And that led to the Hollywood Bowl thing. Brandi absolutely put together a spectacular group of musicians and artists. And sitting on the stage, I want you to know what this experience was like, because you said you were in tears. We were all in tears. Because the love coming from the audience in the Hollywood Bowl and the love felt on stage was an all-encompassing surround sound of feeling, It just, there was nothing better than that. It was palpable. And there were moments, the stage turned. So act one of the show was Joanie and Brandy, and then act two was the Joanie Jam. So the stage rotates on a turntable, and, they kind of did a reenactment of her living room. So there were couches and chairs and all the artists sitting. My couch partner was John Batiste, and next to me was Annie Lennox and Allison Russell, and next to them was Elton John and Meryl Streep. Marcus Mumford was in front of me. It was Jacob Collier on keys, and everyone was there celebrating and loving Joanie and Brandy, and it was powerful.
Oh, I love it. I have chills. Seriously, you talking about it, right?
Yeah, Buzz. It was pretty. It was pretty goosebumpy.
Oh man! And then you've got another goosebump event that was captured, the Patsy Cline performance event that will be coming out in the new year. That was done at the Ryman, I believe, right?
I was at the Ryman, and it's a PBS special. It's out now. It's called Great Performances, Walkin' After Midnight, Patsy Cline. And that was my reference earlier, Walkin' After Noontime. But that was intimidating, and it was nerve-wracking to do that. I had been asked. I love Patsy Cline. I listened. She was on the radio when I was a kid, and I loved her music and loved her song. And then, did a deeper dive, later as I got older. And she is known as having one of the all-time great voices. So if you're asked to sing a Patsy Cline song, and in this one I was asked to sing "She's Got You," I was intimidated, and I worked hard on that because I didn't want to blow it. The Ryman is one of the best places to perform. It's a place that Patsy performed many times. Her daughter was there, her grandchildren were there, and you don't want to disappoint people. You don't want them to invite you to sing and then it doesn't work, or you blow it, or something. So I was very focused, I should say.
Oh, well, Patsy Cline, no small item to be part of. Have you ever toured that Quonset Hut studio there in Nashville where Patsy recorded and others like Johnny Cash and Bob Dylan recorded?
No. Well, yeah. I would love to know what that is. I'd go visit there in a second.
Yeah, you want to do that because then there's some inside stories about Patsy's time in that studio, some classics, how she was a, don't take any bull character. She was, as you could imagine, pretty tough.
Well, I didn't imagine that, but when I've read about her and have heard some audio on her, she was very funny apparently, and had very colorful language, shall we say, and I just didn't put that together because when she sings, she's so still and so. Still, I mean, it's like that. And so you kind of think that somebody like that is very quiet in real life. And that's what I love, that sort of dichotomy of how somebody is in person and how somebody is when they perform. Like, I've met so many comedians that are so hilarious on stage and they're very quiet in person. So the reverse is also true.
Yeah, I was surprised too. I thought like you that, she would be much different than that, but definitely tour the Quonset Hut studio there.
Oh, I will.
You feel a presence there. I really mean that. You feel something from all the performers that have been there in the past.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh my goodness. It's so true.
So you completed a residency at the Cafe Carlile in New York City, and I want to hear about that experience, but I'm going to make a comment and see how you feel about this first. I believe with the Cafe Carlile at the Carlile Hotel, but also their smaller little venue, the Bemelman's Bar there, if you are in a bad mood and you go in to the Cafe Carlile or to Bemmelman's to listen to music, to listen to Rita Wilson, to listen to who's playing there, I promise you, you leave in a good mood. Do you agree with that?
I agree wholeheartedly. And I also would have to say that I think music in general puts you in a fantastic mood. So if you're in a bad mood, just put on some music. It will transport you to a better state of mind. But yeah, I love those places. There's something to be said about these old venues like the Ryman, like the Cafe Carlile or Bellman's or the Troubadour, or, I went to the Blue Note when I was in New York recently. And there's something to be said. It's like the walls, the paint, the air, those molecules they're just the same molecules that have always been there, and you feel them. And that's what it's like. You sense the people that have come before, that have played, the people that have listened there. I always think when I do a show there, and the Carlisle is very intimate, but I kind of feel this way generally. You just have to make every place feel intimate, is that there is always somebody in that room that needs to hear what you're singing and what you're saying. And if there was just one person in every one of these spaces and I had to perform, it would be the same performance, because I would know that they were there for a reason. And there's something about the intimacy of those places where people can actually talk back to you, and sometimes, or they shout at you, not shout, but they talk to you in the audience. And I like that. I think it's great. It's not heckling. It's actually like they're part of it. The audience is as much a part of the show as the performer is.
Those places are treasures,
without
question.
They are.
They are. Tell me about, in March, you'll be performing in Nashville with the symphony, right?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. It's my first symphony show at the Nashville Symphony, and it'll be a combination of cover songs that I've done on my albums, original material, and some material that I have not sung before. And also maybe I'm looking into adding maybe some Broadway, just a couple of Broadway things.
That sounds exciting. And once again, there you are, challenging yourself, pushing yourself to do some different things.
I feel like I'm very much of the mind that nobody should be boxed in, because we're artists, we're creative people. Things are coming at us, we're processing, we're writing, we're sussing out what it is that we want to say. And sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to look the same every single time. And I think it's liberating to have that kind of a mindset. And I don't believe necessarily in genres. I believe in good music, and good music is good music no matter what period it is and no matter who the artist is. I mean, John Batiste has a new album out right now that's called Beethoven Blues, and it's his riff on Beethoven. I mean, how cool is that? It's so fresh, and it's still got everything that you want, but it's not traditional, and it's not in, any sort of genre. I guess it might be in a genre. There's a genre for everything, but it's a little bit outside the box, which I love.
Well, and I just had Julian Lennon on the podcast, taking it full circle, right?
Yeah.
But we talked about, and he brought this up because he's got a photography book out called Life's Fragile Moments. And he said exactly the same thing. He said, why do people have to be pigeonholed?
I know.
That's not needed. Just let me do my thing and create.
Exactly. Every creative person does more than one creative thing anyways, because it's a need. It's like, it's part of you. You have to do it. And so, first of all, I love Julian's music and I love his photography. He is so talented and such a lovely person. But I know every person I know that's a creative person does something else, whether it's painting, knitting, sculpting, pottery, cooking, sewing, photography. There's something that you have to do because, we have actors have a very collaborative art form, and it's not something like you just go around doing monologues by yourself all the time, although maybe some people do, I don't know. But when you don't have that creative output, if you're working on something, you need to put it somewhere.
So, Rita, in closing, I'm going to turn the tables on you a little bit and say, if you could interview somebody living or dead to understand as a musician their creative process, who would that be?
Wow. You can't pick one person. I guess I'd have to say Paul McCartney. I probably would say Paul.
It's a good one.
Yeah, he's he set the tone for all of us, They all did. The Beatles set the tone for all of us, really. And so I would probably want to interview Paul.
Rita, I'm so grateful I got to interview you. This is one of the joys of my life, being able to meet up with great folks like you and learn about your creative process and celebrate your music. Congratulations on everything. And it's an honor to have you on Taking a Walk, Rita Wilson.
Thank you so much. See you soon. Stay warm in Boston.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Taking a Walk podcast. Share this and other episodes with your friends and follow us so you never miss an episode. Taking a Walk is available on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you get your podcasts.